I'm a little concerned. He said distinguished speaker, so that really raised your expectations, and I'm worried I won't be able to fulfill them. But I want to thank Heritage Foundation and the Observer Research Foundation for hosting, and also welcome the members of the Indian Parliament that might be in town here. And just to say, we're in the Lehrman. This auditorium is been sponsored by a longtime activist and a political leader, Louis Lehrman, from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And I just walked in and saw the plaque, so I just thought I'd mention it. I'm here to talk about the future of U.S.-India relations. Both our countries have a long and storied history, as you all know. But the biggest thing, and we were having a great conversation, you wish didn't need all these notes and you could just kind of go, is that our shared values of freedom, democracy, and the rule of law, which seems obvious to us, but it's uncommon around much of the world. And so it seems like this relationship that we have should be much closer, much more naturally, right? It shouldn't be so much work. It should just occur. But we got to work at it. I envision a relationship that we should have which provides more security around the globe for our individual nations and more prosperity for our individual nations and other nations around the globe that comes with our shared relationship and the good things that come out of that. I'm going to talk to you briefly. We've got 15, 20 minutes here, so I talk kind of fast, but I'm going to focus on counterterrorism, the threat of China, our defense cooperation, and promoting democracy. On the counterterrorism front, as it's already stated, in February of this year, JM, a terrorist organization, attacked a convoy in India and killed 40 people and wounded 44 others. We still offer our deepest condolences to those individuals that were killed, their families, their friends, and a reminder to all of us that we stand with India in their darkest hours, and not the least of which is why India has stood with us during our darkest hours. And we have that relationship, and that's an important one to remember, because these attacks likely will continue to happen, unfortunately, and it is our collective resolve to counter terrorism that will strengthen both of our nations. The U.S.-India counter-terrorism partnership was cemented in January of 2000 with the creation of the U.S.-India Joint Working Group on Counterterrorism, and we met this year for the 16th time in March. And one of the things that the product of that is a streamlined and efficient system to mutually identify terrorist threats. And that's good for both of our countries. This President Trump, has intensified our counterterrorism sanctions efforts, and so that we can better target leaders and their associated entities. It shouldn't be so difficult. We, unfortunately, in the United States, we want to assign the same things, the same privileges that we share in an open democracy and the rule of law to people around the world. Unfortunately, our adversaries don't play on the same, they don't use the same rule set, and assigning those rights and privileges to people that seek harm to us in the most egregious and horrific ways it's counterproductive to our security. And so I applaud the president for his new position. And in 2018, the U.S. designated more than 230 individuals and entities, the most of any in a year in the last 15 years. So this enhanced program that we're using to identify these individuals really gets after them quickly, instead of getting stuck in the bureaucratic nightmare that can happen in democracies. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about Pakistan. During the U.S.-India Joint Working Group on Counterterrorism, both countries recognized the urgent threat and the need for Pakistan to take meaningful, irreversible, so they have to be committed to it. You can't just say it, do a little bit of it, and then backslide, which is the norm. And verifiable action against terrorist organizations, and they cannot continue to provide safe haven to terrorist organizations. They allow them to recruit, raise money, and operate in their country. This poses a direct threat to India and the United States and the free world. JEM, the terrorist organization that conducted the attack, openly recruits and trains in Pakistan. This is just wholly and completely unacceptable. I mean, you know, our Department of State found that Pakistan government did not restrict the Afghan Taliban, the Haqqani network. You know, and people don't even know most people don't know what the Haqqani network is, and they say, why should I care? In Pennsylvania, thousands and thousands of miles away from Pakistan and Afghanistan, one of my constituents was captured and held by the Haqqani network for a very long period of time, having children. This is a couple having children, bearing children under captivity with the Haqqani network. And there's ISIS and Al Qaeda. They cannot be. These are enemies of freedom and civilization, and they can't be allowed to just remain in Pakistan and not have that punitively addressed. So this President Trump, has suspended security-related aid until, again, decisive and irreversible action is taken. We've imposed unilateral sanctions on LET and successfully organized a campaign to have the UN sanction placed on Masood Azhar, the head of Pakistan's JEM. So I just think that we should work even more closely. And while it's the 16th time we've gotten together, I think that we should not be able to mark it by it's this time we got together. There should be a continuum of being together on this, where we're having a daily discussion. We're working across countries, across line, and we're standing shoulder to shoulder, hand in hand, arm in arm, working in the counterterrorism arena. I think that's the natural place for India and the United States to be. Now, addressing the threat of China, China is a strategic adversary to all freedom. To all of us, you know, it's the difference between once again free religious beliefs, democratic values, open democratic government, and the rule of law, or the communist regime of China. There's not a lot of parallels between the two. It's very stark. It's very black and white. China's instituted unrestricted warfare, not only against the United States, but other countries, and including India, which I would say actually has a greater stake. I mean, it's on India's doorstep. It's right there, right? So we just must work on these two contending visions together. We don't want a totalitarian spy state that suppresses the freedoms of religion, speech, and assembly, and is cheating its way to economic prominence. It's cheating its way, and in many cases, with the aid of both of our countries. It's quite honestly, it's just ridiculous. Let me see. India faced an unprecedented border standoff with Chinese forces in the Doklam Plateau region in 2017. China's building islands, as you know, in the South China Sea, wishing to project power 500 miles beyond its shore. They opened Confucius Institutes in our country and neighboring countries to India. The Southeast Asia is a primary focus for the Belt and Road Initiative. They've leveraged several governments with projects in Sri Lanka, the Maldives, Burma, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Laos, all right in India's backyard. I remain gravely concerned about the success that China is having while this is happening right before our very eyes. Their success in doing this, just enumerated by the countries in the region that are already working with China. I think we have no choice except to expand our collaboration in combating China's growing influence. And I want to commend the government and the work of the government of India. India is the first country to publicly denounce the Belt and Road Initiative. Prime Minister Modi has rightly advanced the neighborhood first policy. And the United States is taking concrete actions, too, with the launching of the free and open Indo-Pacific strategy, of which India is a cornerstone. And just in case you don't know, let me enumerate this. Free and open India, the Pacific, is a version of safe, secure, prosperous, and free region that benefits all nations. The principle of the strategy include respect for sovereignty, independence of all nations, peaceful resolution of disputes, free fair and reciprocal trade based on open investment, transparent agreements and connectivity, and adherence to international rules and norms, including those of freedom of navigation and of overflight. I just look forward to continuing to work with our partners in the Indian Parliament and the Indian people on both shores, right? I have a great and very large Asian American Indian community in the district that I'm privileged to represent, and we have that shared collaboration, and we just need to do more of it. Let's talk a little bit about defense cooperation. This is one of the things that vexes me as a person who was privileged to wear the United States military uniform for over 30 years. We're getting better, right? We have a defense agreement that started in 2002, and our current situation allows us to use each other's facilities for refueling and resupplying, sales and exchange of encrypted communications and data equipment. In December of last year, our two militaries launched the first helicopter cross-decking exercise. I'm a helicopter pilot, so that's a little close to home. Inaugurated the first ministerial 2+2 defense and foreign ministers dialogue, and India stationed a military attaché at CENTCOM in Bahrain. India also issued the STA-1 easing of regulations for U.S. high defense tech and aerospace exports, and it's the only country behind Japan and South Korea, Asian country, to do that. In February of this year, two 777 large aircraft infrared countermeasures self-protection suites were sold to India, as well as over 72,000 rifles, 24 MH-60 Romeo Seahawks for anti-submarine operations, and 24 Sea Guardian drones and 111 Navy utility helicopters. I'm an Army guy. I guess the Navy helicopters are okay. And India conducts more joint military drills, tabletop exercises, and defense dialogues with the U.S. than with any other country. Here's, among other things, the concern, I think. We don't understand the strong relationship with India in the defense arena with Russia over time. Russia is not India's ally in the long run. They don't have the same beliefs, and it is very difficult for us to collaborate on an intelligence basis, on a hardware basis, if India is going to be buying S-400s, the premier anti-aircraft defense artillery, from Russia. It's just difficult to do that. So at some point, look, each of us have a choice. We, in the United States, and certainly members of Congress, myself included, want to draw closer to India and want to draw closer in a strategic way and in a defense fashion as well. But there's a difficulty in doing it when I think India's trying to figure it out and play a little bit of both sides. At some point, they're going to be at a crossroads where they have to make a choice, and I think they're quite honestly there right now. Let's talk about promoting democracy. 900 million Indians were eligible to vote. 900 million. That's almost 3 times the size of the United States, and half the United States doesn't even vote. I mean, this is when democracy is being diminished around the globe. This is the time to promote freedoms and democratic action, and there's no better place to do it than a cooperation and collaboration between the United States and India. The future of our relationship, I think, is met with 3 challenges: domestic challenges, the mutually addressing the challenges that I already enumerated with Russia, because we have our challenges with them as well. They're a trading partner. We don't trade military things, not certainly ones we really, really care about, and trade policies. And I don't want to get into that too much because I think you're going to deal with that a little bit later. But look, mutually addressing the threat, well, let's go back to the domestic challenges. Both countries have some domestic turmoil. We have a hyper-political environment, partisan political environment, which makes it difficult to get things done. And sometimes we make decisions in Washington, D.C. that are based on who's in office and their political party, as opposed to what's good for our country and what's good for our relationship with other countries. We got to get past that. We got to find a way to get past it, and I think that's our charge. India has some other issues as well. They've got their own domestic turmoil, just like the United States does. They have some unemployment issues. Got to figure out the status of Kashmir, some attacks on freedom of religion, and I would say also addressing pollution. just in a greater way, and all of us can do better at that. And mutually addressing the threat from Russia, I can go through the list of bad things that Russia has done, and I'm sure you're well aware, but I'm not going to do that. I just am going to remain deeply concerned about the partnership with Russia, the purchase of the S-400s, the purchase of 10 Kamov 31 airborne early warning helicopters. Obviously, we're happy to sell you our helicopters. We are happy to do that, and we make the premier machines on the planet. And also signing a lease with Russia on nuclear submarine leasing and manufacturing facilities for rifles and production of frigates. And we can handle both of those things as well, and I think can be a very great partner with India in that. This close defense partnership with Russia threatens the interoperability. Interoperability, if we're going to work together on intelligence and on hardware, we can't be, it makes it difficult, right, to work with your partner when they're working with your adversary at the same time. Not saying don't trade with Russia, but there are certain things where we can't cross the line. To that extent, our partnership is threatened by things like the Countering American Adversaries with Sanctions Act, or CATSA, which says that any country conducting significant transactions with Russia's defense industry can be sanctioned by the U.S. government. And the purchase of the S-400s falls into that category. We are offering India sale of THAAD, the Patriot Missiles Defense System, and NASAMS-2, the National Advanced Surface-to-Air Missile System. And we're also in discussions for providing the F-35. But I doubt we're going to be able to provide the F-35 at the same time you're buying India's buying S-400s. And then finally, we'll just talk a little bit about trade. Again, the one thing that's going to be a challenge for us, we want to level the playing field for both countries. We have a great relationship, and there's just no reason that we should be imposing 232 tariffs or looking at 301 investigations or any of those things. We should be able to come to the table and know that this arrangement, this agreement between the two greatest democracies on the planet cannot be imperiled by trade disputes or defense disputes, and know that this collaborative effort between the two of us only strengthens both of us, and quite honestly, it's going to be needed by both of us to counter effectively the threat of Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea. We have to stand together or we will fall separately. And with that, just appreciate your attendance and your interest in the issue. Know that there are friends in Congress that feel the exact same way that you do, and we're looking to collaborate and be good partners with you to figure a way that we can move faster and do more to strengthen and establish this relationship and bring it very, very, very close together. And I'm really happy to take your questions this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We'll keep the Q&A session short, and maybe I could just start off with one. Actually, before that, I want to thank you for speaking with such clarity and candor, particularly on the counterterrorism question. We need more of that in Washington. So thank you. On India, I just wonder, the mood on the Hill toward India has traditionally, over the past 10 years, been very positive. And one thing we've been covering in the last day or two of discussions is that in the last year, we've had some challenges emerge, some that you referenced, including over Russia, over Iran, over trade. And I wonder, has the mood on the Hill sort of retained its optimism, its positive view toward India? Have you noticed any shift? Is there some sort of retrenchment, or do you sense that we're just as optimistic about the future? Or do we have some challenges we need to address?
I think we all recognize the challenge. I don't see any diminution of optimism regarding a relationship with India. The caucus is the largest one on the Hill for good reason. But at the same time, people like me don't understand. This seems so obvious to us that this would work out much more quickly, much more closely than it has. And so we're trying to understand what inhibits India from from wanting to become closer to the United States? Why would they be encouraged to make a purchase of S-400s and draw closer to Russia when they can clearly see Russia as a malign actor, annexing Crimea, invading Ukraine, and you know, the things in Georgia, the infractions just continue. Syria, you name it, around the globe. I mean, they might not have the capabilities of China, but they are antithetical to what India believes in as a people, as a government. And so it's hard for us to understand what the calculus is. Is there something that the United States has done that India is fearful of, that we would betray them, or that we have kind of left them out in the cold against their adversaries? And it's hard for us to see why we aren't closer already. So I don't think that there's a falling off of the enthusiasm and the hope that we can come closer together, but there is, I think, a concern to seek greater understanding of what's keeping us apart.
Yes, question down here.
Sir.
Oh, thank you for coming. Mitsuo Nakai is my name, Reagan Foundation. I know Iran, since you mentioned Pakistan, Iran and Pakistan were sharing nuclear technologies, but they both sharing it with North Korea.
Absolutely.
And now I believe in sanctions. That's a part of diplomacy. But they are good only for 2-3 years, and they find a way to cheat. So my question is, how can we stop cheating?
Well, I guess that's all in the eye of the beholder. I would say that in most of these totalitarian nation states, and I would actually consider China, at least the Chinese Communist government, as one of them. North Korea, certainly. There's a sector of society which is fairly small, probably measures in the thousands of people that are actually running the program of these governments, and those individuals are very interested in their own well-being. And so while sanctions on the country might be helpful for some period of time, and the countries agree to them and then immediately cheat, or find some overtime cheat, or find some way around them, sanctioning the individuals involved over the long period seems to me to be something that we could consider more of, to get their attention and try and bring them into the right kind of activity.
Well, Congressman, I know we have to get you back to the Hill for a hearing.
Yes, sir.
This was really excellent. I want to thank you again. Please join me in thanking
Thank you.
Congressman
Thank you
Perry.
very much.